Whether you work in hospitality, travel, or technology, you're going to get so much from today's conversation. One of the biggest takeaways for me is that the best technology in hospitality isn't about replacing people. It should be about creating space so you can have better human connection, giving better service, and then a better experience for both the guests and for the employees. We're also going to talk honestly about the pressure hotels are facing right now, from sustainability, but also cost and staffing challenges, and where technology can genuinely help rather than hinder hospitality. I'm really pleased today that our guest is Jane Pendlebury, the CEO of HOSPA. So Jane, for anyone who doesn't know HOSPA, can you tell us a bit about the organisation and what your role is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a UK-based membership organisation. We grew out of BAHA, which was the British Association of Hotel Accountants. So we have a lot of finance members based on that legacy, but really we look after the commercial layer in a hospitality business. So finance, technology, revenue management, marketing, owners and owners reps. And our tagline is that we help hospitality decision makers to be the best they can in their careers, the best networked, the best informed and the best developed. So by doing that, we do professional development, we have networking events, we hold an annual conference, webinars, and we write guides on various things when appropriate.
Brilliant. And what's your role, Jane? What do you do?
I am the CEO. I joined HOSPA as a volunteer, well, actually BAHA as a volunteer many years ago. And then I went on the payroll about 12 years ago, running just membership and events. And then I became CEO just 10 years ago.
Congratulations. I love meeting other female CEOs. There aren't enough of us around.
No, and neither of us are called David. Isn't there a stat?
David or John. Fantastic. And you've been in the hospitality industry for a long time. Tell us about how that's changed over the years you've been working there.
Yes, I mean, hospitality is one of the oldest careers, or one of the oldest professions, I say, or industries ever since sort of time began. There were the pubs and whatever where people used to go. So fundamentally, I don't think things have changed. But recently, we've seen quite a lot of development. The pandemic did actually change things, well, for every industry, I think, but for hospitality, it changed things. But I think in more recent years, it has been a lot of the technology advancements. Most recently, AI, obviously, that's having an impact. We've seen changes in sustainability. We've seen lots of pressures on costs from national minimum wage, national insurance, business rates, paying back the COVID loans, lots of sort of small changes. But fundamentally, I think the industry remains the same. We're looking after people that aren't at home for whatever reason. They might be traveling, they might be going out for a celebratory dinner, or they might be having their kitchen replaced and need to go out for a meal.
And what are the things that the leaders are talking about at the moment? What's top of their list at the moment?
Right now in 2026, it very, very, sadly, it is the increased costs. It's those employment costs, which are really damaging lots of businesses. I mean, we've seen that with pubs more than with probably any other aspect of hospitality, where the stat at the moment, at the beginning of May 2026, is 2 per day have closed down just this year. And even the chains, who were much more resilient in the pub world, they're also suffering. So it's a tough old time, and it is those increased costs just to keep businesses afloat without charging ridiculous prices for the guests that are out there. And it's hitting luxury a little less probably, but it is going across the board.
No, it's tough, and we've seen that in industries that we support as well. The costs have made a massive difference in high people industries.
Yeah.
Now, IT naturally, we believe technology is all about people, and behind every IT issue and every system, there's people that are relying on it. And I think you've got a fairly similar perspective, but you were talking to me before about technology that frees people to focus on people. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yes, this is where I see the massive benefit of technology. If you take an average hotel, there's a lot of technology going on in the background, whether that is AI or robotic process automation, or just a lovely system that's making things easier to use, which is getting rid of some of the more laborious grunt work of processing data, where it's easy to simplify through some kind of clever technology. It's brilliant to have that done, freeing up that member of staff to just be out and about chatting to the guests. I would say most people join hospitality because they enjoy that aspect of it. They want to be with people, they want to be making people enjoy their stay, making them happy, whatever it might be. So that back office work enables the personal touch to be delivered at the front desk.
Exactly. And I remember when I worked in aviation, when self-service kiosks arrived in airports, everybody feared that jobs would disappear, people wouldn't be there. But actually, the role of the people working changed. So what are you seeing in hospitality? Are you seeing jobs disappear or?
No, I don't think so. Certainly sort of not redundancies as a result of tech. I think perhaps there might be the odd example where they haven't had to recruit somebody if there's been some natural loss of staff. But I think you're absolutely right. The role changes slightly. The Citizen M hotels, I don't know if anyone's ever stayed there, but they're a brilliant example of it's all automated at the front desk. You go in, you can check yourself in, you can print your own key card, but there is always somebody stood there just sort of welcoming you, making sure you're all right. If you're struggling, they'll be right there helping you. And I think that's as good a service as you can get, because actually, if you really didn't want to use the kiosk, you could just engage straight with that person and they would do it for you. There was a lot of resistance again in the luxury sector, but I see massive benefits in giving guests choice, whether they want to engage with the tech or whether they don't. And at the luxury end, I think you ought to offer that choice. And there's certain bits probably which will never hit a 5-star Park Lane restaurant, such as a QR code to order your bottle of wine. That'll probably never happen. But there's a great benefit to having a QR code if you're in a busy pub and you want to order a coffee after your meal and you don't have to get up and go and queue at the bar. So I think there's massive benefits to things like kiosks, QR codes, whatever it might be for the guests.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago when I was working in aviation, they did some research and the highest value customers were the ones that wanted the least touch points. Mm-hmm. So that the guy who's traveling first class week after week after week going to New York, he does not want someone to check him in. He does not want someone to ask him what wine he wants. He just wants everything to happen and he's quite happy to use his own technology. And I'm saying of course there are women, but unfortunately, it's still mainly men in that bracket. So there seemed to be a very strong link between the more you paid, the less you wanted to be served, and the people that wanted the most service were the people who went on holiday once a year and were a little bit out of their depth with what they were doing, and they needed the support.
Yes,
it's not what you expect sometimes.
No, I think that's probably true across hospitality, apart from when you are in a lovely fine dining restaurant where part of the experience is probably the sommelier talking you through which wine would go best, paired with your starter or whatever it might be. So it's and I often say this with a business person when they're traveling and checking into a hotel, they're one person. That very same person might come back the following weekend with family in tow, children in tow, and they're an entirely different person. So you just have to treat everybody as the individual and just hopefully that's why you need people to react to their facial expression. If they're like, I'm not interested in you telling me where the swimming pool is, because they're not going to use it. But at the weekend, that might be their top priority. So we'll be engaging and wanting to find out more. People, very important.
Very, very, very important. And you mentioned earlier a little bit about AI. There's a big concern, isn't there, that if we use too much AI, some of those entry-level jobs, the junior person in finance, the junior person in HR who's learning the basics, learning how to do the operations, if they get replaced by AI, how will the leaders be formed in the future? How do you view that?
I think it's a very valid point. If you don't understand how it's all working at the sort of the grassroots level, then it's going to be very hard to make decisions when you're at the top making those big decisions. I always think of the example in hotels many years ago. We're probably going back sort of 40, 50 years. There was something called a Whitney board, which basically was a great big board where you put in the person that was staying in which room, and you could move them around as their arrival and departure, and all of those things. And then obviously came the implementation of computers. And it's very hard now for anyone who's never used a Whitney board or a manual diary, whatever it is, to switch from a full-blown computer where it's allocating rooms, it's telling you who's due to check out today, who's due to arrive, and all those bits and pieces, to do that manually, because it's just never done anymore. It's all computerized. So I guess there's always going to be a role for learning what the AI does. And I suspect the people that are coming in will be able to look at that AI and figure out very quickly what it's doing, and get another AI program to do whatever is missing. So probably it'll be all right, but it's an interesting thought, isn't it? That those basic levels of knowledge we're handing over to a computer.
And maybe it's a generational thing that we think we need to know what goes behind it. The people joining now, they're all digitally native, aren't they? They've been brought up with that, and maybe it's just an old-fashioned way of thinking you need to know what sits behind it, because that's what we grew up with.
Yes, that's probably, we only have to look at the next generation coming through. They are very different in the workplace than we were, if you wind the clock back a couple of years.
Yeah, 5 or 3 or something like that. Yeah. When we started out. Sustainability, we talked about this before. Sustainability is a really huge topic in hospitality, but I always feel a little bit sceptical about how deeply embedded it is. So what's really happening with sustainability in hospitality?
That's a very interesting question. There are some brilliant examples of where it has been done absolutely fantastically, from the independent sort of one-off hotels through to the chains. I think when you look at the bigger global chains, they are looking at the big picture, and they've had people dedicated to sort of all aspects of ESG for many years. So they have been able to implement certain things from a global perspective. It becomes the standard at every hotel, and it becomes part of, they have to abide by those regulations in order to fly the Hilton flag or whatever it is. So they are privileged in that they've got somebody or a whole team focused on it and are able to advise. How that filters down sometimes to the sharp end, it probably is very reliant on the local general manager to make sure that it is implemented properly and the waste is being dealt with appropriately. The independent sector, I think it's much harder for them, but there's some shining examples. There's a hotel in the Cotswolds called Whatley Manor, where the owners were very, very focused on becoming a sustainable hotel. And so we're able to invest, and you go there and it's just the most perfect example of everything. Lights going off when you leave the room, and no plastic, and the waste being dealt with, and food waste being completely measured and sorted, through to hotels like exclusive hotels who are B Corp. They've done that. EarthCheck is another very popular one across the chains. I think everyone's trying. There's certainly been lots of changes, some smaller than others, but I think everyone's working in towards the bigger goal. I think sometimes it's very hard just to step on to that train to take you down that path. That first bit is quite a daunting prospect. So I always say, we just start with some small things. Start using clear rubbish bags so that you can see what people are throwing out, and that your waste is being appropriately recycled, or whatever you need to do. Just start, and then once you've got that a little bit into the culture, it should get bigger and bigger. And if you've got somebody in your operation that's really keen, put them in charge and make them put that into the culture. Every decision should be made through the lens of sustainability if you're doing it right.
No, brilliant. I mean, I love if you've got someone keen, put them in charge. We've got an internal team called EcoNuts, and they're various people from across the organisation of different grades and responsibilities who just really care and want to make a difference, and they work together they meet sort of once a month. There's about 4 or 5 of them that get together, and it's through them that we've started doing using re-engineered kit, so even reselling kit that's secondhand to people that don't. Secondhand sounds terrible, but it's refactored, rebuilt, but it's not gone to landfill. It's reused because most jobs don't need powerful computers. There are some jobs that will need it, and they might need a new one. But yeah, all of that stuff's come through our eco-nuts, and it's quite exciting getting the feedback from the bottom of the organisation or from across the organisation. It makes it far more valid than just from one person.
Yes, feels very genuine, doesn't it? I also love the fact that, if you are refactoring computers and giving them to the people that need them, that maybe, don't, as you say, don't need the more powerful ones, maybe can't afford the more powerful ones. And that local community is such an important part as well. And that's what makes hotels successful now. So often restaurants where they're sourcing things locally, they're appealing to their local community. Even Airbnb, who we don't, as hoteliers, we prefer people to stay in hotels. But even Airbnb will often in their guidebook say what the best local restaurants are and what they recommend locally, which is all entirely valid for the traveller.
Do you think that there are some people in hospitality that just at the tough time that we're having at the moment just aren't able to really improve, that they're really struggling in paying their salaries, treating their people properly, that it's fairly difficult to look at beyond that at the moment?
I think that is a good point. And sometimes when you embark on any project where you're being more environmentally aware or ethically aware, there can be some investment needed, and it's tough at the moment for people to do that. But I think small steps, especially when you're starting, bite-sized chunks, just get it moving as little by little, and that all improves, and will some of the parts will be bigger. And with looking after your people, yes, salary is important, all of those things, but actually recognition, reward through recognition can sometimes be really valuable and a really good way to take people forward. So the expense of making some big changes sometimes might be a bit prohibitive, but that doesn't mean that you can't still move forward.
Absolutely. And moving onto people in the way that you just have, hospitality, it's a people first industry. It's people delivering service and great experiences to other people. How important is the culture and the experience that people have to deliver a great guest experience?
Yes, I think it makes all the difference. You could have the most perfect meal, but if it's badly delivered by a grumpy member of staff and not at the right time and whatever, then you haven't enjoyed your experience. Whereas you could have a fairly sort of mediocre meal, but if it's been delivered with a smile and energy, then it makes all the difference. There's a hotel in London where we actually hold our annual conference. It's the Royal Lancaster Hotel, run by the most inspirational general manager, Sally Beck, who her goal was to make her hotel the happiest hotel in London, which I think some people sort of sneered at a little bit when she first said that, thinking it seemed very trivial. But by goodness me, she has achieved that. And you only have to walk into that hotel and you can tell that the staff are happy. They're always engaging with you from wherever you are in the hotel, whether you're walking through past a room attendant or even back of house. If, when we're running the conference, we might go into the kitchen or something, and everybody is always brilliant. That culture has definitely come from the top, and then it becomes infectious, and it's utterly brilliant. So I think culture is in some examples more important than actually the quality of what's being delivered, although I would always recommend that you go for your highest quality as well.
Yes, but that whole thing about being informed and communication is so important. If things do go wrong, then communication sorts out most things, don't they? If you're actually open and honest, and
yes,
that makes a massive. Yeah. We all know, don't we, when we're on a train and it stops and happens regularly. If somebody's telling you, well, actually, we stopped because blah, 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 and we're going to get going again. Then you think, okay, I can relax. I'm not going to go for anywhere for 10 minutes, but that's fine. I know what's happening. If it's just silence, it's grim, isn't it? And I think in a person-to-person industry like hospitality, that communication is so important, isn't it?
It really is.
But you can't blame me. I'm a technologist. I'm going to take us back a bit to technology because that's what we do at IT Naturally. What do hotels still get wrong about technology? What doesn't work in hotel technology today?
That's an interesting one. I think what happened again, if I take it back to the pandemic, I always think you should stop talking about the pandemic. But what happened there when we reopened was there were a lot of knee-jerk reactions to buying things that suddenly we needed to deliver this, that, and the other. And it was a good example of not thinking through the technology decision, just buying something because it seemed that you needed that for next week. Now that those decisions don't happen in that way anymore, but still, a good salesperson can wander into a hotel and convince people that they absolutely need something. And if there wasn't a problem in the first place, then you don't need to find a technology solution to deliver a conclusion to it if there wasn't a problem in the first place. So I think I love the fact when you've got a strong CTO or whatever in a hotel or a hospitality environment where everything has to go through that one person, it prevents those mistakes being made, really. So not just if the departments just can't go, and somebody has gone along to the housekeepers and told them they absolutely need something in order to communicate that when their bedroom's ready, it can be very tempting for the housekeeping department to say, yeah, absolutely, we need this. But if it doesn't link into everything else, then it's not going to work for the big picture. So the good examples are where you've got a strong CIO or CTO and they are controlling the whole thing and making sure everything is working like a fully tuned orchestra.
Because we're definitely, as customers of these hotels, we're trusting you with some quite intimate data, aren't you? You've got financial data, you've got our personal data, but you've also got some of our preferences data and family relationship data and all sorts of information about us that we wouldn't want to be shared. So there's a high level of trust between a guest and a hotel when we give you our information. Managing that information professionally is so important.
Yes. And I think most people's sort of GDPR, cybersecurity, they've mostly got that right. But as somebody once said to me, it's probably not you can be as careful as you like, but there's still every chance that you will get some kind of damage through some cyber breakage somewhere in the system. Yeah. So that's where you need good advice and people that are there giving you the best possible up-to-date security software that there is available.
Exactly. It's vital that, yes, we manage that as well as managing the data to share in front, so that somebody dealing with me, I expect them to know about me, and we all expect that, don't we? If I check in, if I'm a member of a loyalty scheme and I check in to a hotel, I expect them to know who I am. I expect them to know my room preferences. I expect them to know all of that thing, and we need to balance the two, isn't it? It's balancing customer service with security can be quite a challenge at times, I think, for.
Yes, it can be, because as you say, it might be that if they always put a drink in your bedroom, they'll know that you want a gin and tonic or a bottle of wine or whatever it might be. But you don't necessarily want everyone to know that. So yeah, from a security point of view, that's crucial, but also a training point of view, because if it's all very well if they've got that data saying what you would like or the fact that you don't want your aircon on, whatever it might be, if that's not implemented at the sharp end, then it's pointless as well. So keeping that data secure, but making it accessible for those that actually need to know those preferences and implement them for you. So it's no easy job being a hospitality CTO, or probably any CTO. And I often think that they'll be responsible for the fact that a printer's got jammed, and then the next day they're responsible for a ransom demand or something. It goes from one extreme to the other, and it always falls on the same people's shoulders.
And while I've got you here and you've got so much experience, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is a hospitality trend that's going to really grow over the next few years? How's it going to be different in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's this, I almost kind of find the word irritating, but experiential. It is that's going to make one hotel stand out from another. So the hotel that is actually going to help you have a great experience. And that can depend again on who you are, whether you're the business person one day or the family member the following weekend. It can vary. But I think that giving people a whole experience and maybe that local knowledge, community, local suppliers, serving the food in the restaurant, that sort of thing. So the meat being sourced locally, or the vegetables being sourced locally, and then the staff being sourced locally. I think it's things like that are already there, and you already see them, and people go back time and time again to venues like that.
I think, I can see that. And I've seen over the last few years more of a sense of fun sometimes in hotels, particularly in the lower cost hotels. There seems to be, a little bit more playful than they used to be, which I'm quite enjoying.
Yes, no, that's a really good point. Yes, I'm glad that that's true, and I hope that continues to grow as well, because it doesn't need to be stuffy, does it? So long as you're doing the stuff properly with the right controls in place, then a big smiley, welcoming face that's full of fun is just the icing on the cake, really.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us. I think one of my main takeaways from today is that technology in hospitality is not about getting rid of people, not replacing people. It's about enhancing the information that they have and what they can do to give a better experience. So you're going to be able to find out more about HOSPA and connect with Jane on LinkedIn via some links that'll be in the show notes at the bottom of this. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. What a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.